there, Star Wars collectors. Welcome to another Bossk Bounty video, and welcome to episode 29 of Ask Bossk Bounty. This is, of course, the weekly series that drops every Sunday. It gives you the chance to ask me questions in the comments section below, and of course I do my very best to answer them each week. Loads of questions again this week. Apologies if I don't get round to answering your question, but please don't let that put you off and leave your questions in the comment section below for next week's episode, and then we can keep this series going. I just want to give a quick shout out to my friend and fan of the channel, James. He has actually sent me something in the post which I'm going to be giving to my son for his birthday. His birthday's next week. I've been trying really hard to get this item. I know that my son wants it massively, and James has actually sold it to me for retail price, which is very kind of him indeed. So thank you very much. It's actually a hard thing to get hold of these days. I'm not going to mention what it is because my son might watch this video, but it's for his birthday. So big shout out. Thank you very much, James. Now, before we move on to the questions, don't forget to drop a like down below because that lets me know that you are enjoying the series. And of course, if you're new around to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and hit the little notification bell, and then you'll never miss another episode. And with all that being said, let's get on to the first question of this week. Aaron Katamer says, question for next week, mate. Have you ever considered selling all of your modern collection to go full 70s and 80s vintage? So I can tell you, Aaron, I've considered it many times. I'm lucky enough to be able to collect both, I guess. I haven't got a extensive collection in either by any means. I mean, I've got most of the vintage collection. I've got a lot of the older figures from the Legacy and the Saga, a lot of modern stuff, loose and carded, a lot of the vehicles, things like that. And I do have a fairly decent vintage collection, if you like, from the 70s and 80s, the Kenner and Palitoy stuff. I'm not going to tell you which one I prefer because it's very difficult for me to choose. I have the nostalgia of all the original stuff that I played with when I was a kid, but I do love the modern line as well. But yeah, I'm going to say it has crossed my mind, but I want to collect both. I enjoy both, and I just have to spread things out evenly that way. Drew Beck says, what's your opinion on the vintage collection C-3PO, like height-wise? Do you think it's accurate, or is it too short? So I do agree with you that I do think it is a little bit too short. This C-3PO, which is VC06, and also it's re-released in the Black Series 3.75, and again it's being reissued in the most recent reissue wave. I do agree with you. I do think it's a little bit too short and small all over. Very slightly. It's not too noticeable, but up against other characters, I think he is a bit too small, yes. Eldon Duke says, great video as always. Keep it up. Thank you, Eldon. Here's my question. What is your favourite clone battalion? So I've put them out here, some of the ones that I've got here. It is the 501st. I love the 501st. I've got loads of them in Lego as well. I don't know, there's just something about it. Darth Vader's Legion. You've got Captain Rex, Apo, Fives. There's just so many cool characters in the 501st. And this one here, particularly the Airborne Trooper, he actually came with the Order 66 set. He's a great figure as well. But then again, I do like all the clones, really. I mean, I love the 212th, the orange ones. They are great with Cody. And I do like the 327th as well. Great looking figures, all of them. Very hard to choose, but if I was going to pick one, I always go with the 501st. Shannon Rainey says, hi, do you collect the Gentle Giant Jumbo Star Wars line? And if you do you own the Gentle Giant Jumbo Bossk? I have two of them. I have this one, which I'm just going to grab now. Very difficult to be able to get this into the screenshot, but there's his legs. So that's the Scout, the Biker Scout. And the other one I have is Hoth Leia, and Hoth Leia's in the loft. To be honest, I just do not have space to be able to collect something like that. They're kind of a novelty thing. They look great. If I was to choose one that I want, it is the Bossk one. I don't have the Bossk. I missed out on that one. But the Biker Scout is probably my favourite trooper. So to have that one is like a consolation prize, if you like. Rick Quintanilla says, love your videos, Bossk Bounty. Thank you, Rick. I've got a question for you. The Biker Scouts are my absolute favourite troopers. Which are the most articulated, and how have those been reissued, if at all? I have quite a few from the 90s Power of the Force, but their fixed pose arms for the speeder bikes are a bit frustrating for neutral off-bike posing. Stay safe, and cheers from Texas, USA. So I think that still the most articulated one is this one. This is the Black Series 3.75 inch. Pretty sure it is also from the Vintage Saga collection, possibly. Not 100% too sure on that. They've probably used the same mold anyway. Little bit frustrating about this one still is that you've got the black hinges on their shoulders, which is a bit annoying. They never sort of really corrected that. But this mold has been used, or this sculpt rather, whatever you want to call it, has been used on multiple occasions. I think it's the same sculpt that they used for the speeder bike in 2012, except for they widened the stance a little bit so he could sit on the bike better. But this one's got all the articulation you need. It's got decent articulation all over really, and it's a decent looking biker scout. And they used it like an unpainted body piece in the middle there. Not too sure if that's accurate or not. You'll have to let me know in the comment section below. But it's a decent looking figure, but I think it could do with an update if I'm honest. Tom McCosker says, hey Bossk, I'm a big Clone Wars fan. Do you think that Hasbro will do a Clone Wars Series 7 line? I don't think they're going to do a specific Series 7 line, if I'm totally honest. I could be completely wrong about it, but I don't think they would do that. Whether they would do a whole Clone Wars line again is another matter. That's an absolute possibility with the success of the show. And of course that line would then include some of the characters from Series 7. But I think what's more likely is that they will just incorporate characters and figures from Season 7 into the Black Series and the Vintage Collection. And I hope that we get a Rex, and maybe he'll have the Ahsoka helmet as well as like a secondary helmet. That'd be pretty cool. Not this one though, because we all know that this one's not good enough. So when we get Rex, please Hasbro, do not just repack that figure there. Thomas Miller wants to know, what figures do you think Hasbro should reissue from the 2010 Vintage Collection run? I think they should do the Echo Base, Soldier, Tarkin and any Skiff guards. So this is a difficult one for me because on the whole, in general, I'm not a fan of repacks. I understand why they're doing those reissue waves, and they're not really for us, the people that have got those figures already. You know, some people don't need a Han Solo with the face deco if they've got the original VC50. But when it comes to actually repacking a figure on the same card from the 2010 line, so for example, as you say, the Tarkin, for example, I think if they were going to do that, they'd have to update the figure for me and get rid of the soft goods skirt, or do something in the way of improving that figure rather than just repacking it. I think it would annoy the people that have paid a lot of money to get that figure, because he does command quite a bit on the secondary market. And also it'd probably annoy people saying, well, if you're going to bring him out, please just update it, because it's you know, the figure's just not good enough these days. However, figures that you mentioned there in terms of the Echo Base Soldier, I know for a fact that that one would go down quite well. Army building type characters, the Rebel Fleet Trooper as well from the Tantive 4, that would be brilliant as well, because everybody wants to build an army around those figures. So absolutely right, the Echo Base Rebel Soldier and the Fleet Trooper, they're two that I'd love to see repacked. Bill Polk asks, is there a droid from the original Sandcrawler scene in A New Hope that wasn't released or has not been released in a long time that you would like to see produced? And there most definitely is. I would love to see them release R1G4. I'll throw an image of him up on the screen now so you can see the droid that I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure that he was last released in 2004 as part of the Saga series on those like gold coloured type card backs. And he's obviously one of the droids that was in that lineup that Uncle Owen and Luke Skywalker were looking at to buy. But another reason why I think they could release this droid is because they could just repaint him black and have him as the droid that was in the Mandalorian episode on the prison episode. Those droids are rolling around the corridors and they look fantastic. So easy one for Hasbro there in my opinion. You could kill two birds with one stone, one for the Sandcrawler and one for the Mandalorian. Breakman says, greetings Bossk, thank you for the rad content and for leading the charge with the Back the TVC. What do you think of the upcoming Vintage Collection Slave 1? The paint job looks amazing, but I think Hasbro should have made a new mould. So to be honest, Breakman, I will be reviewing that hopefully early next week. So I'll let you know then what I think. Jackie Jupiter says, I've been a collector of many things in the past, some being Funko Pops, Lego and Pokemon cards. I want to start collecting Star Wars figures. I have a couple of 3.75 inch Rays and the Child from the Black Series. What do you suggest to look for someone who is new to collecting figures? So I would just say collect the things that you like the look of. If you like this scale, the 3.75, try and maybe concentrate on that. If you prefer the 6-inch figures, then I would stick to that. Or if you've got, you know, quite a bit of money to be able to spend on collecting, then you could collect both. It's completely up to you. But first and foremost, I'd say just buy the figures that you like the look of, rather than just buying everything that comes out. That's exactly what I do with the Black Series, for example. I only buy the figures that I really think look great. I don't necessarily buy the whole range. Whereas with the vintage collection, maybe because if they're on those vintage cards and I've collected all of them, then I'd probably have to buy all of the ones that they ever release. Shakes the Clone says, my question, if you were to put together the Max Rebo Band for the Palace playset, what are the definitive versions of the band members? Which releases of which figures to seek? Let's skip the 3-pack of the backup dancers for now. So I actually quite like the original vintage Max Rebo Band. I think they're great figures, great sculpts. They look really nice. I understand that they'd be quite expensive to get hold of these days. So the Power of the Force versions are a decent looking Max Rebo Band. I don't think you could go really too wrong with those. I don't know whether they use the same sculpts as the original Kenner ones, but they look pretty good to me. I know some people have put them on their barge and things like that, and they look great. So that's probably the ones that I would go for if I was going to be getting the Max Rebo Band, at least until they bring them out in the vintage collection, which would look very nice in their own vintage style box, just like the Kenner one. The Imperial Communique says, if it's not been asked, what previously produced figures do you think are adequate to repackage onto the vintage collection cards, particularly the original 92-96? So there's a few in the Legacy collection, Anthony, that I would choose, and this one is definitely one. This is Zuckuss or Forlom, whichever way round you want to go. He's a decent figure in the Legacy collection that could easily just be put onto a vintage card that we don't have now. There's also the Rancor Keeper from that line. He's a perfectly adequate figure to be released on a vintage card, and again, that one that we need from the original 96. Apart from that, I'm not really too sure which ones would qualify from the 92-96 that could just go straight on. Things like Bib Fortuna and things like that do need an update, so they can't just be repacked. But there are some others from the Legacy collection which I'd happily have on vintage cards, like Herchek Kalfas, the Cantina patron. He's a perfectly good figure that could be put on a vintage card, but of course he's not part of the original 92 or 96, as you say. Paz Vizsla says, Ask Bossk Bounty, do you think they will make a heavy infantry Mandalorian? So we have this one in the 6-inch line. I'm guessing you mean will they make it in the vintage collection? And all I can say, my friend, is I really do hope so. It's a fantastic figure. It would look amazing with the ones that they've already brought out for the Mandalorian, the Mando himself, Cara Dune, the Remnant Stormtrooper. Having one of these guys would be awesome in the vintage collection, in my opinion, and I really hope Hasbro do it. RX Gold says, if they want to do re-releases which line up with anniversary dates, why don't they add the 40th logo sticker to the vintage cards? So this is something where I think Hasbro have kind of missed a trick. They've obviously got the retro collection come out to celebrate ESB. They've obviously got a lot going on in the Black Series with the sticker. And I think they could have done something for the vintage collection for the 40th anniversary. Obviously, we're yet to see if there's still things to come out that do that. Obviously, the carbon freezing chamber has been rumoured. Will that have the sticker on it? I do not know at this point. But in terms of carded figures, I think they've missed the trick there a little bit. You know, maybe they could have just done like some foil variants or something with the little 40th anniversary logo on there, just to give us something to celebrate Empire Strikes Back. But I think the line as a whole in the vintage collection has totally missed that, in my opinion. Daniel Boswell says, hey Bossk, which vintage character do you think is way overpriced in today's market? So I'm not sure whether you're talking about vintage Kenner or if you're talking about the vintage collection. If you're talking about the vintage collection, someone like Ahsoka Tano is just way overpriced for me. Obviously, it's a rare card back, but you can get the loose figure very easily from the Black Series 3.75 red and black boxes line. If you're talking about vintage Star Wars, something's going on at the moment with vintage Star Wars. The prices are just going crazy. I've been on some live auctions and things like that, and some of the prices are just crazy. So I would just say, in general, the whole of the vintage Star Wars market is just through the roof at the moment. Whether it's because everyone's at home with disposable incomes, they're on furlough, they're still being paid, they're not buying petrol, all those kinds of things come into the equation. But sure enough, vintage Star Wars is high on people's wish lists at the moment, and the prices are going through the roof. Gumbo asks, do you think they'll ever re-release the Vintage Collection Grievous, and if so, what price do you predict? I have no idea whether they will re-release it. I think it would probably annoy a few people if they did. It would certainly be a good one to re-release. It is certainly sought after for the people that haven't got that figure. In terms of the price, I personally feel it should be exactly the same price as all the other Vintage Collection figures. I'm not too sure about whether they should be increasing or decreasing because of size. If you think about the Jawa they brought out recently, end of last year, that was completely the same price as any other Vintage Collection figures. So why should the price go up if it's a slightly bigger figure? I don't agree with that at all. I think there should be a set price for the line, every figure the same. Rich Cousins says, hi Tim, great video as ever. Thank you very much, Rich. Which environment out of all of the saga would you most like realised as a Vintage Collection adventure set? Mine would have to be the Emperor's Throne Room with Emperor and Sim Alu pack-ins. So I'm going to be a little bit predictable with this, and to be honest, from the saga, the original trilogy, it has to be for me the Cantina. They can do so much with the Cantina and give us so many different figures from the Cantina. I'm sure everybody wants those figures, but to be a little bit less predictable, maybe a Hoth playset, like an Echo base playset or something, that would be pretty cool. There's lots of characters from Echo base that I would like. To be honest, the list is endless, but yeah, I do quite like your idea of the Emperor's Throne Room with the Emperor and Sim Alu. That would be pretty cool. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode of Ask Bossk Bounty. Thank you very much for watching, of course. Don't forget to leave your questions for next week's episode in the comments section below. I appreciate all you do. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and of course, we'll see you on the next one.